All right, you guys, well, we're starting today's video up at this piece of lease land. Winter's coming fast and we got to start getting things out of the ground here. This video is going to be a bit of a mixed bag. We got to harvest some winter squash, do a little bit of cleanup up here. And then I got a bunch of irrigation to move. We just recently moved the chickens off of this piece of land back to the home farm. I didn't end up getting any footage of it. It was really cold that morning and anyways, didn't get footage of it, but we got to get the irrigation kind of moved over to where they were so that we can get it back to green before fall, get it established and looking good again. So we'll move those 3 cannons and then we'll get to harvesting. I think we'll also get to doing some cherry tomatoes and a couple other odds and ends, so stick around. Okay, a little change of plans here. I don't have enough hose to get from this one end. When I designed this system, I made a bit of a mistake in the sense of not having enough areas to tie into. So I either have to come all the way back to the very beginning and tie off the main line where it goes into the blocks for the garden, or I need to tie it into the garden blocks. And then I have a hookup down at the very far end, which can be a bit of a pain having to switch it back and forth. I should have just bought more fittings and had an option with a valve. So that's something that we'll probably do for next year. Okay, we ended up knocking it down to 2 of those sprinklers with us having to run so far down to the end and then basically double back half that way again. There's just not enough pressure sometimes to run the 3. And what ends up happening if you do is that you don't get as far of a distance, like coverage, but then the water droplets also don't come out as fine like a mist. They're a lot bigger water droplets and sometimes they can just like pound the piss out of the ground when they hit it. So you kind of have to just watch the pressure and stick around a little bit and see how it plays out. So I shut off the main line and then knocked it down to the 2, and it's way better coverage. And then what we'll be able to do is as we continue down that fence line, like I had mentioned, is that we'll be able to incorporate that 3rd one because it'll be less hose, if that makes any sense, as I go. Until we're way at the far end, then it'll change again, but dogs are chasing moles. Anyways, so that's all done. Let's get into some harvesting. Okay, well, we're harvesting winter squash up here today, and the butternuts are coming around. We're not going to be able to get all of them, they're not all ready. But what I'm really trying to do this year is come out and harvest them as they come ready instead of waiting until most of the bed is done. Because what's happened in the past is we've waited and then the deer come in and they'll start chewing on these things pretty badly. They are in here at night. They're really chowing down on the alfalfa. They haven't been coming into the garden blocks too bad, but we're gonna just try to get what we can as they come ready. And they're gonna be all different sizes, but that's okay. Not everybody wants the same size. And then I'm just gonna throw them straight into the box of the side-by-side today, no bins. I'll bin them once I get them home. And we're using the tree planter bags again. They work great. So we'll be doing some butternut. I believe there's a bunch of spaghettis ready, and then we'll look at maybe grabbing some delicatas as well. So when we're looking for what's ready with a butternut is that we're looking for that nice tan color. When they're not quite ready, they'll be a lighter color, like a green, not green and white. Well, let's go show you. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So you can see here that this has still a bit of green, and you can see the difference between the tan and the green color. So neither one of those are quite ready. So here's another example. Still very distinguished in the color. What we're looking for, I think I pretty well grabbed them all already, but is something that's a little bit more tanned up. So that one there is getting real close, another day or two. And these ones, same thing. I'll give those another day. So there's an example of one that's a little farther along. You can kind of see it's a little bit more tan, that green's a little bit less visible. That's kind of what you're going for. And then another good indication too is that when they do snap right off, you don't have to use the snips. That's usually the best way to tell. I know some other people will say that if you wait until the tendril just above has been died off, that's another good way to tell. Yeah, so that's pretty well it for these today. We'll come back in another couple days and grab the rest. Okay, well these Delicatas are pretty well all ready. So that's the Delicata. These are a little smaller than we've had them grow in the past. I'm not sure why, but again, a nice little storage winter squash. And the nice thing about these that we found out, because this is only our second year growing them, is that they're really easy to tell when they're done. Because all of these stripes, they're gonna be predominantly white when they start growing, and then they'll start to get these green stripes. But then you know when they're done, when the one at the bottom that's touching the ground goes yellow. It won't always be the one stripe. Sometimes it'll be more like wherever it touched the ground, like that guy there. But yeah, they're nice, little 4 to 6 inch winter squash. But yeah, quite delicious. So we're gonna get a bunch of these harvested today. I only made it maybe 13 feet into those 2 beds and ended up with full bags, and there's still a whole nother 3rd bed. So they'll be, I'd say probably predominantly the Delicatas today. But like I say, normally these things are a little bit longer. Like I'd say 8 to 10 is kind of what we've seen in other years. So I'm not sure if maybe we planted a different variety or what. But yeah, they're pretty consistent in the sizes that we do have. And it's kind of hard sometimes to flip them over and see, like you can see that guy there just broke right off when I was looking, and it doesn't have that yellow stripe. So they'll still slowly ripen, but they're just not going to be at their prime. That's one thing about planting the 3 different types. I guess we only did two types of winter squash so close together, is that they do send runners, right? And ideally what we try to do is come in and we make it so that we don't always get time, but we'll come through once they start to get established, and we'll make it so that it has four heads basically. We'll let each head grow like 1 to 2 winter squash, and then we'll top them. We didn't get to that this year with this new piece of land, just there was a lot on the go. So what ended up happening is a lot of these plants have trailed over like 6.5, 7 feet, and there's some butternuts intermixed the Delicatas. So not a bad deal. Just sometimes if you plant them too close, is that they will kind of get a little messy. We've noticed that especially with melons. Melons need a lot of space. And then here's an example of something that can happen too. So dry conditions. There was about a week to 2 weeks where there was no water. The hay was getting was a cut, drying in the field. The other hay field on the other side of the road was also getting cut. So there was no water at all. So we ended up letting things dry out a fair bit, and then when the water did come on, we hammered, and that can be what happens sometimes, is you'll get some splits. So fortunately I've only seen one so far, so not too bad of a deal, but something that can happen if you let things dry out and then overwater. But I'm full, so let's go empty, and then we'll continue on. So I think one thing next year too that's going to be a little tricky up here is that we let a lot of stuff go to seed in regards to weeds. We just weren't able to stay on top of it, which we had big plans of putting everything in landscape fabric, but it just didn't happen. We got the onions in it, which was nice. They're kind of the biggest thing because they're the longest season crop, so thankful that we at least got those under net. There's a nicer one, a little bit bigger. Or not under net, sorry, in landscape fabric. Another nicer one there too. Yeah, so hopefully, I think next year what we'll do is we're gonna buy maybe a pallet. We'll buy a pallet of landscape fabric. There's nobody in town that really sells it, and with us doing the small seedling sale that we do, it's another thing that we can sell with our dirt. We sell bags of topsoil, so start selling a few hard goods. I think that it'll be a benefit. Buy it in bulk, and we should be able to sell it to the customers for, you know, a fair price. We're still making a bit of a profit, but they're still getting it better than buying from somebody else. Here's one that went orange. I've never seen them do that before. But I'm full again, so let's go dump this. Okay, well, we got a pretty good haul going on here, but I think that this is going to be it for these anyway. And there's not a whole lot left in there, really. There's more butternuts for sure, but we pretty well cleaned the Delicatas right out. That is one thing I'm a little bit nervous about this year is just this space. We wanted to try to grow a bunch more storage crops so that we could have products to sell throughout the winter. Fingers crossed that people buy it. But yeah, we're gonna have a lot of potatoes, onions, squash, cabbage, carrots, beets, kohlrabies. So a lot of things going into the winter months that we can store either in the cold room or in the walk-in cooler. We just store them in those bins that you've seen in other videos, but yeah, fingers crossed that we have enough space. We should be able to hopefully move a bunch of Garlic Fest. Jillian ordered a bunch of new bags, like onion bags, well, potatoes too, but those mesh bags. So we should be able to sell a bunch of them. We're hoping in like 10-20 pound bags, a little bit more bulk. People can stock up for winter, which will hopefully get rid of a large amount of inventory, so we don't have to take as much into winter. But enough said about that. Let's pull the side-by-side ahead and we'll go to the spaghetti squash. Okay, well, we got a pretty good haul. I'm not going to take all of them just because they're not all like ready. I mean, they're close and they'll continue to ripen, but you can kind of see that they don't all have that perfectly golden color. They're definitely there, but these will be fine though. They'll finish to cure up. Like I say, we got a week before the main sale that we want to go to, so they should be able to finish up, but you can just see that there's still a lot in here. They're just not quite golden enough, and the stem itself isn't quite dry enough. So we took a bunch. We'll maybe take these ones next week. So they are definitely starting to go golden. That one there is actually still attached pretty good. So again, it'll give us a chance to get the rest of these into storage, and then we'll go from there. And then while we're over here, I may as well show you the fall succession of beets. So they're still a little small. The tops are kind of, I don't know, they're not too bad. I guess some of them are quite large. So we'll try to get up here hopefully this week. I mean, I don't know, it's probably 15, maybe not quite 15. There's probably four bins per bed of beets. And then we still got this whole end of potatoes. Tops are all starting to die off. I think Shaylin said there's 7 different varieties in here. So we still got to come in and get the rest of these all dug out. We already turned the water off. We haven't watered them in a couple weeks, so things should start to dry out. And then the other thing we'll be doing in the next couple weeks too is coming and taking all the hoops down and then cutting all these brassicas out of here. So there's a fair bit of cleanup to do still, and then at the end where the onions were, we got to pull all those tarps up, pull all the irrigation, and then start laying landscape fabric. Sorry, silage tarps all the way down for the winter months. We're taking some of the home production out next year, so we'll bring some of the tarps that we usually cover there to finish covering down this way. And then we still have like a bed and a quarter of cabbages to harvest. A lot of them split, so there won't be as many as we hope in there, but there's still some down that were too small when we harvested the majority of this, so we should be able to get probably another 20 out of here if the dog doesn't go in there and destroy everything. But that being said, let's take this load of winter squash to the house and we'll get it put away. All right, well, we're back at the farm, and I think what we're gonna do is clean up this mess. We've already got, you can see the bins in there. We've already got some potatoes and some winter squash stored from previous. So I think what we'll do is we'll start to organize this a little bit better. And because that room is still full of onions, I don't want to put the winter squash in there, and the weather outside is still nice for the next foreseeable future, is that I think what we'll do is we'll store the winter squash and the start of the potatoes here, get as many of the onions as we can in there, and then once we sell a bunch of the onions over the next hopefully weeks, then we can move everything in there for winter once it's time and we need to keep things out of the weather. But for now, this room is going to be fine for probably about another month, and I think it'll be a nicer temperature than in there. There's a little bit cold in there still. So let's get this all cleaned up, and then we'll start bringing in the winter squash. You've like granted us a fair bit of space. Should be able to stack 5 or 6 bins across here, and then we'll try to go maybe 2 high, and then also if have to we can go underneath. And then yeah, don't kid yourself, I didn't put any of this shit away, so I still gotta figure out find a home for all this mess, plus get this all tidied up, and we'll see if we can't try and keep this a little bit more organized in here now that the season is slowing down. So let's go start filling up some bins, and then we'll bring the winter squash in here. Okay, so one thing I am trying to do here now is I want to make sure that these bins are clean and dry. You don't want any moisture down in the bottom of the bin. And then we're just going to load this basically as full as we can. And I think what we'll do is we'll obviously try to separate them as well. So we'll go Delicatas, and then the other two, try to keep everything separate. And the way that this will work is that when we go to the big market here, it's a 2-day market, we'll just bring entire bins. Usually we set the tables up. So at this 2-day market, normally what we'll do is we treat it a little bit different in the sense of how we set it up. Like at a normal farmer's market, we do as much on the tables as we can. But with this type of market, being that it's 2 days, we're doing a double booth, so we're coming fully loaded, is we'll, look at this dog behind me. She thinks that spaghetti squash was put there just for her. Anyways, we're coming with 2 booths, so we'll basically do one whole booth normally. Like we'll have our lettuces, celery, what else do we have ready right now? Beets, carrots, beans, anything that we normally bring to a market will be set up as usual. And then the whole other booth will be all bulk stuff. So it'll be big bins of winter squash, big bins of onions, hot peppers, sweet peppers, and it'll be all by the pound, so people can take as much as they want. So we'll leave everything in big bins. Potatoes will be the same deal. So anyways, let's finish getting these all stacked up. All right, well, we just brought the last bin in, and that's not taking up too much space, which is good. I mean, ideally, we're gonna need more, but like I was saying earlier, hopefully we can sell these before we bring the rest up, and then worst case scenario, we can store underneath. And I mean, really, they could probably even go in the greenhouse if they had to. So we ended up with 3 Delicatas, and like I was telling you earlier, there's maybe one more bin up there worth of harvestable ones. The butternuts, there's still a bunch to come, but we only actually ended up with 1, and I think it's mostly because they stack nicer in the bins. And then we ended up with 4 plus the one that we already had of spaghetti squash. So I put the ones that we harvested sooner on top, and then there's probably another this much over there again to harvest. We got some potatoes from a few weeks ago, so these are all just curing, reds and whites. And then there's a bunch of these to go. That'll be a full day. We'll probably have to hire some people to come in and give us a hand to get the rest of the potatoes out. All right, well, that's winter squash for the day. Let's jump up into greenhouse 2, and we will start attacking the cherry tomatoes. Pretty well loaded up on this side. I've done maybe 25 feet, and our bin is basically full. And the big thing this week is that we're not going to be going to either one of our markets. We have some prior engagements that we got to attend, so these won't last on here. They're already starting to split. The end of our season always gets a little tough because markets start to end, the CSA ends, so we start to get an abundance of food and not as many channels to get rid of it. What that allows us to do is put some away in the freezer. So what I'm doing today is I'm actually just going to go down and do this whole side. We're going to get it into bins, and then we'll take them back and we'll cryovac them, I think, into maybe 1 pound bags, and then we'll be able to pull them out in the winter months for a batch of salsa, or we could do chilies, spaghettis, stuff like that. So the other side's already been done earlier last week. Shaylin took care of that, so we'll finish off this side, and then we'll see how many we end up with. Yeah, we ended up with quite a few. Like I was saying, you can see that some of them are a little bit split, but not a huge deal for what we're doing. They're just gonna get frozen. So I think for bags, we're gonna use, I think these ones, 8.5 by 11s, or 7 by 11s. So we should be able to get 1.5 pounds in there maybe. And then, yeah, we'll stock them all up and then freeze them. Lay them flat in the freezer so that they don't squish each other. We might be able to fit 2 pounds in here, you know? One, I think would be perfect. So that's 1. I'm gonna see what 1.5 looks like, because I still got to be able to get a seal in there. I mean, like, really, that'd probably be the perfect amount for small chili or spaghetti sauce. And then in the event that it's more than one person, we just pull out 2, right? Or not one person, in that case you need more, you just pull out 2. I think that's perfect. So that's 1.5 pounds. Sealed about as perfect as we could ask for. And I think that that's a good amount. You could easily pull that out and saute that in a, cast iron pan with some prawns, some garlic. So yeah, we'll get a bunch of those made up and let's get them frozen. They're going good. I think we already got 12 done, so we should end up with probably 30 maybe, give or take, which is a pretty good amount going into winter. If you figure you're doing maybe a pot of chili or some sort of a pasta once a week, probably won't see cherry tomatoes again from October until maybe April. I should say May. May at the earliest if we get them in on time. So that would be almost 8 months? 7 months? So it'll be about 30-ish weeks. So you get 1 week. So it's kind of how we base everything. So we've made a switch over the years. We don't actually grow any other tomatoes. We've tried slicer tomatoes and Romas before, greenhouse and field. And just our elevation and climate, it's a little bit tough. You got to get out late, and then sometimes you'll lose a bunch of them in that later end of summer with a flash frost that you weren't expecting. So outside we've kind of steered away from altogether, and then in the greenhouse we've switched and we only do 1 single row of cherry tomatoes. The main reason for that is that there's people that live probably like an hour and a bit away from here, and it drops quite a bit in elevation. That's what they do, is they grow peppers, tomatoes, and they do extremely well, and they can sell them for extremely cheap. We just can't compete, so we've decided to strictly do cherry tomatoes, and we try to get them as early as we can so that we can catch that early season when no one else has them, sell them at a bit of a premium, coast them into the summer, and then come a little bit later in the fall. We're a little bit early on this big harvest. Usually this would be at the end of our season, so 2-3 more weeks of markets we have. But like I was saying earlier, we got things to do, so these would just go bad on the plants, so we're just biting the bullet, getting them a week early and throwing them in the freezer. A lot of people do this with Romas. You could do it with Romas for sure. I prefer the little bit more sourness of a cherry tomato for sauces and whatnot, so that's why we do it with cherry tomatoes. And then we eat a lot of tacos. So we love tacos. We probably eat them once a week, if not twice a week, it just depends. We also like chicken, so I like making like homemade salsa with mangoes or whatever we have on hand at the time. Peaches, we've done it with apricots. You can do it with nectarines. I mean, really anything. To do like a tomato fruit salsa. And then, you can just do it with peppers and tomatoes and onions and whatever. But anyways, long story short, I like making salsas to go with those types of things. Hence the 1 pound packs. I think you can pull these out and it would basically make a perfect batch for 1 meal plus any leftovers. And the nice thing about cherry tomatoes is they're extremely easy to grow. I have yet to master growing tomatoes by a long stretch, especially with like the big beefs and whatnot. A lot of the times they turn red, but then they split, or I can't get them to turn red. So it's just, whether it's nutrients or too much water, not enough water, there's lots of variables. I find with cherry tomatoes, you could basically plant them anywhere and feed them anything and they'll still produce, which is kind of a nice thing to have. last one. You can see we got a mountain of them. We did have to switch bags a little ways through. So these ones are just a little skinnier and taller, but still the same, 1.5 pounds. So let's get these things thrown into a bin. We'll get them counted up, and then we'll go see if we can't find some freezer space. Okay, well, we ended up with 56 packages of those cherry tomatoes, and each one was around 1.5 pounds, so around 75 pounds. I mean, give or take. I didn't they're not exactly 1.5 pounds each. There's a little bit of variance there. So I think what we'll do is we'll just get these thrown in this freezer, and then we'll move on. Okay, so for the time being, I just slid a bunch of this pork over. This is all sale pork. We still got to go through it, like I had mentioned, and figure out what we're keeping for ourselves to get us through the winter. But then I just made a bit of space here and stuffed them all in the corner here, so they'll be safe there for now. And then we'll still have room to put some more vegetables on top if we need to. So that is one thing that we always try to do later in the season as well, is do an inventory. We'll usually leave our inventory on our online store like a little bit high so that it never shows sold out, so people can always be ordering it. And then usually around September, early October, we'll kind of go through and do an inventory so we know exactly what we have. And then me and Shaylin can sit and figure out like, okay, how many chickens do we need to keep for us to get through the winter until the next year's harvest? Same with the pork, you know, how many deer did we get this year? That's going to bring down the amount of beef that we need. So just those sort of things. And then everything that's extra will continue and update the store to sell, but you never want to leave yourself short. We have done it, and we'll probably do it again at some point, but that is something that we try to do, is do an inventory and ensure that our family has what we need to get through the winter months before next year. So anyways, with that being said, that's going to be it for today's video. We managed to get a little bit of stuff done up at that lease land, getting it ready for winter. We got the winter squash started to be harvested, cherry tomatoes, and that's that. So as always, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.